Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. It's me, Austin, your host, joined back again with Mike, your other host, who's prettier than me. And yeah, man, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing good. I am. I'm really experiencing the what do you call it? Like your tribe right now. So I'm in a good mood.
Nice. That's awesome, dude.
Oh.
Yeah, I know we were talking a little bit before the show. You were talking about kind of how niche of a group this is. You kind of want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, dude. So like the crazy thing is like when I first moved in my apartment, I moved in here thinking like, oh, it's your typical, because I'm in a bigger city right now, right? And it's a very liberal leaning city. So when you meet your neighbors, things like that, I just totally expect them to be anti-gun, anti-Republican. I'm not Republican, but like anti-everything, like typical Antifa. If you knew where I'm from, very Antifa people over here.
Very Seattle-ish.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Very Seattle. I don't want to like elaborate crazy about where I'm at, but
Yeah, no,
very,
but the Seattle area, there's a lot of
yeah,
town over there.
exactly. Like the Seattle area is very anti everything. So when I met my neighbor, he's a very quiet, kind of like reserved guy, super sweet. He's got an amazing family. He's got his wife and his son and his brand new baby girl. And I was like, when they first moved in, I was like, all right, sweet, huge pro here because they're very quiet and they're very respectful, and this is going to work out awesome because I'm not going to have partying crazy 19-year-old neighbors next to me. So I'm coming in from a range day. I'm walking through with all my guns, all my shit, my ammo and stuff, and then he comes out and he just whispers. He goes, "Hey, Michael," and like first of all, I don't remember telling this guy my name, so that's automatically I'm like, this dude got me a little on edge. But he goes, "I like your guns. What do you bring it like?" And he started looking at all my guns, my suppressors and stuff. I was like, "Yeah, dude, are you into guns?" Totally expecting him to bust out Grandpa's 12 gauge, some fudge shit. No, he hits me with a very sweet arsenal of what he's got. And I find out he's kind of like us. He's kind of prepping. He has stuff ready. He's a God-fearing, loving country man. And I was like, man, how lucky am I to get that next to me? And ever since me and Riley have been pregnant, they just dropped off a whole bunch of diapers, whole bunch of supplies for us, a bunch of things for to help out with this baby because they've gone through it and they have, babies themselves. So they know exactly what we need. And they've just been absolutely showering us with gifts. And it's amazing because when you find that tribe of very niche people where most people that are into the things that we do are considered crazy and creepy and not even creepy, I won't say that, but you're crazy,
No, I mean, there's definitely a stereotype, right?
Yeah,
it's definitely like doomsday preppers, like you come
sweaty
on my
guy in his basement,
can of beans, past you, like crotchety old dude waiting out doomsday, Y2K bunker full of Twinkies. Like that's very much a stereotype of this.
Yeah,
for sure.
And especially the younger generation of us being into this, we are considered radicalized almost, and
yeah,
it's insane to me. So when you do find your community, you find your little niche group that you get along and you're able to have this bonding like I'm able to have this with our neighbors, where if I needed something, I could rely on them. If they need something, I could totally be there for them. It's awesome. It's an amazing feeling.
That's always awesome when you have that connection with, a little bit of sense of community, when you know your neighbors, you're on good footing. I think it adds a certain layer of security. In the sense that it's like you don't necessarily have to worry about certain things because you know that your neighbor's looking out for you.
Yeah. Well, another thing is like I travel for work now. So I asked them man to man. I was like, hey, man, when I'm not there, can you just keep an extra little eye out? Can you listen a little bit, harder when I'm gone? Because if something happens, I want there to be someone here that can fucking take care of business. Not I trust my wife that she, we practice, we go shooting together and everything like that. But just having another person here that's looking out for her is a great feeling.
Absolutely, man. I think that's one thing I kind of learned growing up in small towns and moving back into one is that you don't see a lot of people where I'm at with things like security systems or something. Like Brink's home security or anything like that. You don't see a lot of that stuff around here, and I think part of that is a lot of people feel like they don't need it because their security system is one, moving to an area that is safer, and two, building that community with your neighbors to where you don't have to worry about someone breaking into your house to steal your stuff because one, your neighbors are watching out for you, and two, your neighbors are dope people. They're not going to steal from you in the first place. So when you have
we had here, I'm so sorry to interrupt you on that, but we had here our neighbors picked up our packages off our door, waited for us to come home, and then immediately came out and gave us our packages. And that was our first intro to meeting them. I was like, dude, you know how sweet that is?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that right there is just such a positive thing to have, and I think that really plays into the idea of like, again, building that idea of community and community defense and building relationships that, like, in my opinion, the best thing you can have when, shit hits the fan is not tricked out rifles and gear and Gucci kit. It's that sense of community, because you can
Yeah.
have all the best gear, all the best food, you can have a year's supply of everything. But if you're holed up in your apartment just hoping that none of your neighbors try to kill you for it, like you're gonna have a bad time, But if you
Oh, yeah.
have that community kind of built to where like you've got those relationships made, it's a lot easier to convince somebody that you're friendly when you've been doing it prior to a terrible event.
Yeah, they're not meeting you during the Y2K.
Right. It's not like, oh heck, who is this dude? It's like, oh yeah, dude, he's sick, he's tight, he's my buddy. They have a vested interest in your survival
Yeah,
because of
and
that personal connection.
And where it brings us together as well is that now, instead of just me and my wife and my child trying to defend ourselves, we have multiple people at a household. We have multiple people that can be an assault group, that can be that group that goes forward with you through the city, or helps you get out of town, get out of Dodge. Even if that's the end of the relationship right there, right?
Right. Or even something as simple as like someone's got to stay awake at night.
Yeah, someone's got to watch.
Someone's got to take the night watch, and if it's just you and your wife, that gets really tiring really quick, and there's no fail safe. That's 12 hours apiece long term. That sucks. You got extra people, like you can now kind of rotate that out. You can get other things done. People are there to take care of you and your wife.
And now you have multiple things set, ready to go, right? Now you have someone collecting food. You have someone willing to go out there with you. So it's not, so me and my wife, right? We are going to have a brand new baby. I'm not sending my wife and I out in the fucking city when we have a baby to watch. So it's just going to be me, myself, and I.
Right.
And if I die, they're fucked. They don't know what happened to me. I'm just not coming home.
Right. Right. I think that's another thing too that's important about that sense of community is that sense of contingency, knowing that like, hey, if you have a strong sense of community and you have a strong sense of like someone else will be able to pick up where you left off and help protect your family and keep them safe and look out for them, they have a vested interest in that. It does allow you the flexibility to go out and do other things. If you're constantly worried about the safety of your family, you can't be going out doing goon stuff in the woods. Who's protecting the homestead?
Exactly.
But if you got someone there to do that, that does leave that flexibility open. So that's awesome, dude. I'm glad you got that.
Yeah. Just this, I don't have it a ton, but just
but even then, just one person extra, it's encouraging. It's also like refreshing to know that like when you sit there and you're like, okay, I'm not crazy. There are other people that think like me.
That's why I got you, baby girl.
Yeah.
But it's the refreshing part of it is knowing that I didn't have to go online to a forum, and I didn't have to go to a gun shop. I didn't have to go to a range to find these people. These are just my neighbors. You don't know who you live in. If you haven't ever spoken to your neighbors and you've lived in your house longer than 2 years or a year, there's something wrong there. There's a disconnect. You need to meet the people you are right next to, or on the opposite hand, right? Shit hits the fan. I've already met my neighbors. I know I want nothing to do with them.
Right. Yeah, you need to know what you're getting into on both sides of that.
Yeah, you can't just meet them in that moment and then find out like, oh, I cannot survive with these people.
And I think that's also another thing about that as well is although I think it is kind of niche and it is kind of a smaller portion of the population, I think it's more people than you think that have that kind of mindset, especially nowadays. I think that you get a lot of people who they are starting to wake up more and more. There's people like a lot of people woke up during COVID. More people have woke up after the stuff in Israel and with Hamas. And more people are starting to realize that like, hey, the world's kind of a scary place. And so I think it's on more people's minds than we think. I think it's just the big thing is a lot of people don't know where to start. They don't know. They think they're the crazy ones because they don't want to talk to anybody about it. But if you actually just sit down and have a conversation with somebody, you might find out like, oh, hey, this is actually more normal than I thought. But there's such a stigma around that and such a stereotype that's been built that a lot of times we don't, because we don't want to be seen as, crazy Uncle Ted,
Yeah. No one
Yeah.
wants to be the weird guy.
What was that?
No one wants to be the weird guy. Everyone wants to fit in. I'll be honest with you.
Exactly.
I want to fit
Exactly.
in. Yeah, I have groups of friends that I don't talk about this stuff with. I don't talk about guns. I don't, because I know they don't get it. And that's
Right.
fine. You have your friend groups, but you need community.
Exactly. And I think that is something interesting for me too. Just kind of taking a little side note example. I find it really interesting when we look at certain things like remember the invasion of Ukraine, like when that first kicked off,
Yeah.
and there was all the stuff going around like the ghost of Kiev and all these like crazy stories about like
Propaganda bullshit.
yeah, it was all BS, and like all the footage we were seeing of like fighter aircraft was all from like Arma or whatever. It was all like computer generated 3D like Unreal Engine video game stuff. And
Yeah.
there was like so much mismanagement propaganda stuff there in the beginning, and everyone was like 2 weeks into it was like, oh, that was all BS, right? Well, then you see the same thing happen in Israel with what's going on now, right? You got both sides feeding stories, and everyone's just like, oh, this is the honest truth, and it's like, bro,
Yeah.
did we not learn from Ukraine? And then like it just blows my mind that you can have people see that, and you can have on one hand like somebody who could be like, oh, the attack by Hamas was a set. Like I've heard this as a conspiracy theory that it was all a setup, it was all a plan for Israel to start this whole invasion, blah blah blah. So they'll believe that like a government elaborately staged a false flag in which a bunch of people were killed to institute a war. But then you have a shooter in Maine who does a lot of weird stuff within. There's a lot of weird coincidences with his shooting.
Yeah, a
and
lot
then
of it didn't really line up, did it?
yeah, and then found shot in the head twice, ruled as a suicide, and are like, no, nothing suspicious here. That couldn't possibly have been a false flag attack by our government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's things like that where it's like you said, there's certain friend groups I would bring that up with. There's certain friend groups I'm just not going to say anything.
Exactly.
You know,
You're like, okay.
so it's encouraging when you find those groups that you can kind of connect on that level with.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, absolutely. I mean, sometimes me and you start deep diving and there's nothing wrong with that or anything like that. But there's some friend groups where if you start saying like, yeah, Bush did 9/11, you're not going to be super cool in that friend group anymore. And that's fine, you know, but.
Or even something simpler, like even just like guns, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you met a friend, like you said, like, oh yeah, I'm into guns, and he goes out and he's got like a lever action, or he's got like the most god awful Wish.com AR, and
Yeah.
you don't want to be a douche, but you're just like cringing every time you look at it. But he's so proud of it, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have to like
Red.
curtail that to where you have to be like, oh yeah, man, that's pretty cool, dude. And secretly you're like, I hate everything about this.
Yeah, and you try not to roast them the whole time. I always end up roasting them, and I feel super bad because they just don't know any better, you know. But like,
Right.
so an instance where I'm actually super uncomfortable talking about politics and firearms and things like that is actually with one of my grandmothers. I love her to fucking death. She is the biggest sweetheart in the world. Her husband is the typical FUD. He passed away, God rest his soul. He passed away about 4 months ago, but he was your typical FUD. He showed up to the range in the vest that's like without sleeves, you know, the tan vest, hunting vest.
Yeah.
And fucking orange hat on, big old like, oh, if it ain't Smith and Wesson, it ain't shit. He carried a shield every single day because that was the best thing ever to him. He gave my grandmother a 38 to carry as a concealed gun. That should say something about it.
Yeah.
But he was your typical. He's not against guns in any way. He would have a couple like Keltex. He had some crazy guns and stuff that are like cringy, like Keltex, and he's just like, this thing is cool as that. But she, on the other hand, extremely anti-gun. She thought the only gun a U.S. citizen should be allowed to own is a 38 special, and that's all you need. And you need 6 rounds, and that's exactly what it is. And just trying to talk to her about anything about guns is an absolute nightmare. So I just choose not to bring that up with her. Now give me a couple beers and I'll fight that bitch in the front lawn. You know, these are my rights.
Yeah. You definitely got to know how to curtail it. And I think that's actually a really good thing too. Overall, is like people perceive you in a certain light, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you need to hide anything you believe, but to a certain point, it's like the reason I don't go to a bunch of like pro 2A rallies anymore, like I did when I was younger, but you always get the crowds that show up and they're like full multicam, tacked out to the gills, and they're there to make a statement. And I get it, right? Like,
Yeah,
I totally understand what you're trying to say. But if you're trying to sway anyone that's in the middle, that's immediately shutting them down. Like they
exactly.
don't talk to you at all, right? Now, obviously, I understand at a certain point, it's like, don't care, these are my rights, right? But if you are interested at all in trying to sway people's opinion or trying to sway public opinion, you have to have a nuanced approach to that, where you have to present yourself as someone who like they would connect with and normally identify with, and then be like, oh yeah, and I happen to believe these things, to where they're like, oh, you're not a crazy person. I've had a normal conversation with you. You believe differently than I do. Okay, that's maybe different
Yeah,
than what I thought.
yeah. I
But
mean,
you
me
go
and you
into it
are.
and you're Alex
Oh no.
Jones was right. They're turning the freaking frogs gay.
Yeah.
Day one, like people kind of just like, okay,
Well, I constantly use me and you in these like in these situations of like how opposite people can still be friends and we can still have community, we can still be together and believe in different things. Like with I know you're very religious and everything. I'm not very religious. I do
right,
believe in in certain aspects of it, but that's how it is. That's how I am. That's how you are. With a lot of political stances, me and you are actually on the opposite spectrums. Like you don't believe in the transgender movement at all, where I'm in more of a neutral kind of area with it. Um,
right.
Things
You
like
and I
that.
have,
So,
yeah,
but
there's
we
some
don't
things
hate
you and
each
I
other.
are right on with, and we agree 100%. And there's some things that we have vastly different opinions with, but we're both able to connect like this.
Exactly. And then in the community aspect, when shit hits the fan, I totally expect our plans to link up. Like we're gonna end up being in this same community with each other. Why? Because me and you get along. We understand planning, and honestly, we need to do more planning together about you know the boog, or not really the boog anymore, but more of like the massive crash.
Right.
Um, and get more plans set aside. But absolutely, dude. Like I totally expect me and you to be with each other in the end.
I think that's another thing too, is that there's just a lot of people who just they they start to see kind of things. People are starting to wake up. I've even seen more people who like they've been big but big gun guys, but they haven't been like preparedness guys, and they're starting to get into that and they want to learn. A lot of people don't know how to start, and a lot of people, especially nowadays, are really like financially constrained, which I think is kind of a great segue into our next topic of kind of like budget beginnings is like what I like to talk to about, call it, right? Is like, how do you prepare and how do you get ready when you feel like the time is very short and the money is not there?
Yeah. Um,
And go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I was agreeing with you. Absolutely. I like the fact that you call it a budget beginning because with everything, including like preparing for the end of the world, preparing for this, preparing for your family, for whatever circumstances may come, you do need in a professional way to prepare yourself to continue, even though this world kind of sucks, this country kind of sucks at this moment. You don't see me saying like, you know what, fuck my job, fuck this. I'm just gonna go live in the woods and I don't care about my job and I could work somewhere shitty like, McDonald's and that's all I'm gonna achieve in my life. No, you still have to strive for greatness in yourself, in your professional, like what you're doing right now professionally.
Right. And think about it this way, right? In extremely rare circumstances, is there an absolutely overnight collapse that requires you not to pay rent?
Yeah.
Like, look at like France, World War II, right? The French people, the average French citizen, still had to get up and go to work in the morning. The country's ruled by Nazis. They still got to go to work, still got to
Yeah.
pay the bills, right? They still have a job to do. So there's a lot of things to where even if it was like a third world war or certain types of collapse, like very rarely are there entire complete systematic shutdowns that would just completely destroy, like save like an EMP, for example.
Oh,
I think outside of like an EMP, where things would completely shut down overnight, there are very rare instances. Even if we get dragged into a third world war, even if there's an economic collapse, like it's not going to be that you wake up tomorrow and just nothing works. Like a lot of times these disaster scenarios, like even look at a place like Venezuela where they had complete economic shutdown. Like,
yeah.
yes, the country was rioting. Yes, things were bad. People still went to the grocery store. People still had to go to work. People still had to find ways to pay rent. Like, they still had to exist. So it's one of those things where I think the idea that like, oh no, trouble's breaking out, time to go to the woods and live off the land and eat nuts and berries. is a little unrealistic. I think more realistically, it's learning how to one set a budget to kind of prepare yourself and get things ready, but also to have stuff to where the more prepared you can be for any scenario, the more likely you are to do better off in that scenario. Think about
Yeah.
World War II when war broke out. One of the first things that went into effect was rationing. Not just of food, but of all kinds of things. I mean, there was things where, you'd always see the phrase, oh, you can't have that. There's a war on, you want to
Yeah.
go buy a new truck, you'd sign a wait list. And then when the military didn't need trucks anymore, you might get one. You
Maybe.
were,
Yeah.
yeah, some countries had food rationing. You were only allowed certain amounts of food because a bunch of food had to go to the troops,
I mean, the depression was the same thing. There was a sugar ration. There was all sorts of rations.
Yeah, exactly. So like the more stuff that you could prepare yourself with ahead of time, the less beholden to the government you are in that regard. So like even if you have to use a ration card, if you have stuff that's stored away, you're
And you
you're not
ration it.
limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, exactly. You're not limited to that. So if you're someone who's recently kind of come to that opinion of like, man, things are getting kind of rough, and you want to start getting into that, there's simple ways. One of the things I think that's like probably the most economical way is I know here in the States, at least where I'm at, you can go get a 1 pound bag of rice and a 1 pound bag of pinto beans or kidney beans for under $2 a piece.
Yeah.
I can find them at the dollar store. It just kind of depends on where you're at. And next time you go to the grocery store, I know things are expensive, but spend an extra $2, grab an extra thing of rice, put it in the cabinet, forget about it.
Yeah.
Same
Put
thing
it.
with
Yeah.
the beans, or anytime you go to get canned goods, just get one more than you normally would. Small little things like that. Like if you normally eat 4 cans of green beans in a week, buy five.
Yeah.
Um,
Put one away just to forget about it.
exactly, and you can slowly build that up. That adds up over time. And on top of that, you can. One of the things like I'm starting to get back into was I grew up doing
Yeah.
canning food, and I recently got some canning stuff for my birthday, which I just turned 30 recently.
Hey,
So
dirty 30, baby.
I know you'll get there one day. But I just got some canning stuff, and the thing is, like, canning is not expensive. You can make you can can fruits, veggies, meats. I mean, my family will can whole meals, in a can. So what I got to do is pour it out, heat it up, or add water or something. And it's really easy and cheap to store that food away that way. So you don't necessarily have to have your entire food supply be MREs or Mountain House meals. And trust me, if your entire like 1 year food supply is MREs, you better be prepared to just blow out your butthole, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You're not going to poop for like 6 days, and then you're going to give birth to a 6-inch piece of rebar and regret decisions and realize that that's all you have to eat forever. So
Well, on top of that, a lot of things like that, so canned tomatoes, things like that, you never really think about it, right? But they were using that as currency in fucking the Depression. Grandma told me stories about where they would use canned tomatoes and things from the garden as currency. They would trade it to the neighbor for a cup of sugar.
yeah, that's another great thing too. Is when you have extra supplies because you are prepared. If you have things that you can trade with other people, that, for example, maybe somebody else has a bunch of sugar or a bunch of salt or flour, and you don't have that one thing, but you've got a couple MREs or, like you said, cans of tomatoes. You can mix and match that back to that barter system. You're both less beholden to whatever the government rations you for your efforts. So that's a huge part of it is finding a way to be food dependent. If you can grow a garden, grow a garden. Even if you live in an apartment and it's just something like one of those windowsill planters that you grow one tomato plant on, that's one
Yeah.
more tomato than you had. You know,
So
that's
what my
something.
girl does that's actually kind of cool is she always does green onions. Green onions
Yeah,
all the time, and all you have to do is put it in a mason jar in your windowsill, and they'll live. Green onions will live. They'll just you just put water in there in a fucking mason jar, and the green onions will survive.
yeah,
And
my
that's such a small thing, but you have no idea the lengths people would go through to just put some green onions in a top ramen packet when they're really,
yeah.
when you eat the same thing over and over, that little bit of flavor.
And that's another one too. My aunt, she lives on the bottom floor of an apartment, and she has like 5 gallon bucket size planters,
Yeah.
and every year she plants potatoes every year.
Yeah, dude, that's
And
awesome.
she gets a couple small potatoes out of it each time, and it's not a lot, but it's something.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that that you can do, small things to get food or to grow little things. Like they used to call them victory gardens back in World War II. Everyone would just have a little plot of land right outside their garden. They'd grow something small, trade with their neighbors, and it was a victory garden. You were growing your own food because the government was rationing it, trying to feed the troops. So, though that's a very likely possibility. Anytime there's any kind of economic collapse, anything like that, the more people that are relying on the government to help them, the more likely you are to experience rationing and things like this. And it's happened fairly recently in our lifetime. So, I mean, not in our lifetime, sorry, but in our parents or grandparents' lifetime, it's happened. And you'd be foolish to think it wouldn't happen again, especially with things like, you consider
I mean,
how.
we saw rationing during COVID, bro. In our lifetime, we
Yeah,
saw it.
yeah,
Like, I remember going to the
yeah,
store and we were
exactly.
only allowed to buy one pack of chicken.
Yeah, that's a good point. I completely spaced about that. But yeah, like a lot of rationing with food shortages during COVID. We saw it. Luckily people had stuff stored up. Plus, again, I'm going to keep making mention of this. If you fall on hard times economically, or you lose a job, or anything like that, it is totally like awesome to have food stored away to where you're like, wow. Like I know a guy who fell on some hard times, lost the job he had to get a different one, didn't pay as well, and they've had to kind of dip into some of their emergency food to help save money. But you wouldn't have that if you didn't have that emergency food. You'd just be blowing that money that you can't afford to spend. So instead of going into debt, you have a security against food insecurity. So that's a good way to do it. And there's a lot of ways to do it that don't require a lot of money. Like I said, just get a little extra every time you go to the store. Buy that packet of top ramen, buy that packet of buy that extra canned good, get some canning stuff. Might be a bit of an investment in the beginning, but it'll pay itself off.
Yeah.
Learn how to preserve food.
Yeah.
Similar thing with water. I've said it before, I'll say it again. A pack of 48 generic brand of water bottles at your local grocery stores, probably $2 to $3, maybe four, right?
Hmm.
Pretty sure most of us can swing an extra $5 a month, right? Or an extra $5 every time we go to the store, buy a packet of water. Plain and simple. It's an easy, cheap way to store water. You know, um, Reuse 2 liter water bottles, reuse milk jugs. I don't recommend saving those for drinking water, but for other things you need water for, there's a bunch of cheap ways to store water. There's a bunch of cheap ways to filter water. You can get, I'm looking at them right now. You can get these like iodine tablets for drinking
Yeah.
water, usually
Yeah.
in like any hiking or camping section at like even like a Walmart, and they're like a couple bucks. They're like $3 or $4, and you have usually like 50 tablets, and I think it purifies like 1 quart of water. It's usually like a canteen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I know what it is. I've seen it before.
yeah, yeah, it's usually like 1 or 2 tablets per canteen, something like that. And it's a way to oh yeah, here it goes. It goes, yeah. So you have 50 tablets, and it treats up to 25 quarts. So
Damn.
you get some of those. You can treat your water, and you have ways to kind of get that food and water part covered. One thing I saw that I never really thought about was a lady who canned water, and her reasoning behind that. Again, it seems kind of weird, like to can water, but because of the heat that you're canning everything at, it's going to sterilize everything.
Damn.
Emergency water. Yeah, I never would have thought to can water because I was like, why would you do that? But it
Yeah.
makes sense to a certain extent that as long as that seal holds, you're going to have sterile water in a glass container. And you're not going to have any of that plastic leakage or microplastics that you get from plastic water bottles. So that's always an option.
That's a fucking,
Um,
yeah. That's dope.
yeah, yeah. I think the other thing too is like medical can be really overwhelming because there's a lot of expensive stuff, or what seems to be expensive if you're on a budget
Hmm.
when you're getting medical. But some of the things that you can get to kind of start saving up simple things, not necessarily getting into IFACs, but like every time I go to the dollar store, they have small packs of aspirin. It's usually like 10 to 25 tablets of aspirin, depending on the milligrams.
Yeah.
Um, Usually aspirin, band-aids, gauze, hydrogen peroxide, and rubbing alcohol. You can get at the dollar store. You know, grab a
Yeah.
couple of those things. At least you've got something to fight off infection and headaches. you know like it's a start. Save up your money and get quality medical while you do, but in the meantime, like, make yourself a boo-boo kit. Not everything is going to be tourniquets and gashing head wounds. Some stuff's going to be like hey, I got a small cut on my finger and I want to make sure it doesn't get infected.
Yeah. Or just the sheer fact, like you're saying, headaches. Headaches will put you out. Headaches will take you out of a
Yeah,
fight.
yeah, exactly. You do not want to be the dude who's trying to get through a really crappy situation and have a migraine doing it.
That's how you make mistakes. You start fucking up. You start doing shit because you're in pain. It's a bad situation, and that little bit of just Advil you put away one day could be the difference between you and your family surviving.
Absolutely, man. I think for everyone listening to, like, if you haven't already, start getting books on homesteading, on natural remedies. Find the Instagrams, find the YouTubes. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can find ways to save money. I can't remember. It's fire something. I'm butchering the name, but there's basically like a home remedy where it's basically onions, honey, I think a little bit of ginger and some lemon peels,
Mm-hmm.
and you let it sit and ferment a little bit. And it's basically a natural cough syrup.
No shit.
Yeah, and you just throw it, you throw it in a thing, you can it when you need it, you take a spoonful and away you go because it puts all the antibiotic properties of all of these different things together, and it basically makes a homemade cough syrup. And my mom used to make it. I can't remember what it's called. It's fire something or other, but she used to make it all the time, and it works. It works really well, and it's usually stuff you already have. That's been my biggest thing is I am not a very financially well off guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I've had to learn a lot of times how to make do with what you have and how to repurpose things you already have to make them do other tasks. You know, how do you use what you already have and make it work for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
whether
make it,
that's
yeah, and make it so that the common person can do it.
exactly, and that doesn't always have to be food, water, shelter type things either. Even when it comes to um, guns and gear, you know, the gun and gear market is one of those things where you can get a lot of stuff that is very expensive very quickly that you can do yourself with things you have around the house. What I mean by that, we've talked about it before. Flashlight covers, right? If you have a red dot, it probably came with a bikini cover. Cut that thing in half, slap it on your flashlight. Now you've got a flashlight cover. Add some electrical tape. It might look kind of ghetto, but it works,
Yeah,
right?
no,
And
the gun community, you have to know what is and what is not snake oil.
exactly. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with if you have the money and you want to get that Gucci thing that's that niche product, fantastic. If you don't have the money, that $25 you spent on a flashlight cover could have been spent towards getting you a tourniquet, or something else that could, benefit you more. There's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of people out there that are like, if you don't have this product, you're gonna die. Or like, oh, the enemy's gonna find you immediately and kill you. Um, the problem I have with marketing stuff like that, if you
Mm-hmm.
are fighting first off, if you're fighting, period, that's a bad time. But if you're going out to fight somebody in a oh crap scenario, even if you're fighting like our own professionally trained military, the odds and likelihood of someone being like, oh, there's one of them because I happen to see the circular part of his scope that's not it doesn't have a kill flash, so I found him. I found the red tent. That's
Yeah.
not likely to happen. Like, if you're one dude out there and you're like sniping at people and they got a counter sniper or something like that, I can understand certain things like that. But I mean, like, if you think realistically that your entire life is based on the fact that you don't have a kill flash on your optic, like
You're
that's
sadly
probably the least
mistaken.
of your concern. What was that?
You're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing, and so many people get hyped up about this. Like, oh, this one thing is going to kill you, you know. It'd be like not the fact that you have no idea what you're doing, walking around in the bushes, making it super obvious, and everyone can see you because you've got some like super weird surplus camo that doesn't work in your area because you wanted to look Gucci. So now you're wearing red Swiss Alpenflage in the open desert. That's
Yeah.
not what did it. It was your kill flash.
You know what is gonna kill you? Malaria.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, the fact that like you didn't sanitize your water, now you got dysentery. Welcome to the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
But that's another thing too is like getting into to gear a little bit again with that budget mindset. you don't necessarily have to like jump balls deep into it. I understand there's an argument to be made about buy once, cry once, but there's also an argument to be made about learning what you do or don't like and kind of learning your way through it, especially if money's tight. You
Yeah.
can go out and get Alice kit, like, Vietnam to 80s and 90s era kit that's still effective and works fairly well. I
Hmm.
can get you, I mean, you can go right now and find a belt, suspenders, two magazine pouches, a canteen for under $50.
Yeah.
And it's something that's a start.
Yeah, it might not be what you want, might not be the end result, but it'll work.
Exactly. It's a start. It's a way to have stuff ready. Or one of my personal favorites, I know if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen me kind of beat this dead horse. Um, the 4-pocket bandolier that comes with 5.56 ammo. So when you open up in the military and you open up an ammo can of 5.56, it's not loose. It's generally in bandoliers. They're in cardboard boxes about the size of a pack of cigarettes, and there's 3 stripper clips with 10 rounds of 5.56 a piece on them. If those bandoliers have a white string that runs about a quarter of the way down, that when you pull the white string out, you can fit 30-round magazines in there. You can comfortably fit 4, but you can squeeze 8, right?
Hmm.
At the bare minimum, like you can get those repack, they're called repack kits. You can get those for like $12 online. And at the bare minimum, you have a cheap little bandolier, something you can throw over you like a man purse, put a couple mags in it, maybe a med kit and a radio. And it is a bare bones, super simplified, bare minimum type of deal, right? But it's
Yeah.
something. And you didn't have to spend a ton of money into it. That being said, don't be the guy who's like, well, my $12, you know, 4-pocket bandolier is better than your split rig from Spiritus, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not. Okay.
It's
It
not.
works. Yeah, it works. It's cheap. It's a way around something. And it's an easy way to get a lot of people gear. But certain things are good for a reason. Certain things are expensive for a reason. Don't be the just as good guy. Know your limitations. But which again goes back to what we were saying. Know what's snake oil and know what's legit. And unfortunately, if you don't have people who already have that gear around you, a lot of that just comes from plug and play.
Yep, I did it too. I have a bunch of gear that I don't wear and I don't use, and I think it's so stupid now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like one of the ones I think of is I don't know what the bigger name companies call them, but Helicon Tex has what they call the mini rig, and I think it's based off like one of the Spiritus chest rigs,
Yeah,
where it's like a mini chest rig that holds like 3 or 4 mags and then
the
3 or 4
the
pistol
micro
mags,
chest rig. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, right. There's a
mm.
lot of Amazon knockoffs that all have like super Asian names, right?
Yeah,
Like the Xizhong Wang, whatever. It's airsoft. The quality of it, the stitching is leaves a lot to be desired. The quality of the material is not as good. It's made cheap. That's why it's $23 plus shipping and handling, not $150, right? Or whatever they're going for.
yeah,
If you're going into that route and thinking like, well, it's better than nothing, understand that you get what you pay for. Do not be surprised when if you use it over long periods of time, it begins to fail.
yeah. The
Uh,
stitches blow out.
Yeah, exactly. An example of this, I just saw a guy try to modify a Chicom chest rig, right?
Yeah,
And he was trying to put drainage holes in the bottom of the mag pouches. And one of them, it worked. The other one, it tore apart because of the canvas that they're made out of. It tears easily, right?
yeah,
Now, he was smart enough to be able to figure out a way around that to where he just cut out that mag pouch entirely and mounted a knife and a tourniquet in that spot. And he adapted and overcame. So don't be afraid either to get something that maybe it's not quite like the best and modify it to make it better. If you
yeah,
have the skills and you have the ability, there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
If you can like a cheap Chicom Type 81 or Type 56 chest rig, the 3 or 4 magazine pouch chest rigs,
hmm,
they're not super awesome material, but if you got a sewing machine and you kind of know what you're doing, you can definitely kind of add some reinforcement. You can add some Velcro, some Molly. You can make things better. Which,
yeah,
yeah, again, it goes kind of like that meme video that goes around where it's like, uh, you're too poor to have good stuff. You have to buy broken stuff and fix it. right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't buy broken stuff and fix it, you just have broken stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Butchering that. But that's basically what you're looking at, right? Like if you're on that budget, like don't be ashamed, but just make the best of what you got.
Yeah, yeah, and then transfer that over to your actual life too, because I've seen people with like full spiritus systems and everything. We're talking like a couple $1,000s worth of gear on, and then you walk up and their car is busted. Their car is fucked, and you're like,
Right.
"Oh yeah, because you're gonna boog out in this, right?"
Right. That's a great example too of knowing your limitations across the board and like having realistic things of that. Like realistically, having kit, super awesome. What are you going to use more? What are you going to use more often? Your Spiritus systems, super dope, like tacked out to hell chest rig, or your car that you take to get to work every day, right?
Yeah.
You got to have those priorities to where like those basic things in life need to be covered. So maybe you have to take a hit and not get that super Gucci gear this time, right?
Yeah.
Um,
In order to put fucking new brakes on your car, small
right,
things.
exactly. And don't be like I know it's hard for me to say this because I'm not a very patient person. Like once I get something in my mind of like, oh, I need this, like I'm like, oh, I gotta go buy it, I gotta go buy it. So
Mm-hmm.
believe me, I get it. But like sometimes it pays too to wait. Like especially if you're doing guns or if you're doing gear. This time of year, like by the time this episode gets put out, we're probably about a month away from Black Friday, right? Every year I'm always every year someone has great deals on Black Friday, and every year I have financially screwed myself by the time it comes to November to where I can't take advantage of it. Right,
Yeah.
but it's a great way to take advantage of stuff in the gun industry to get things. Like if you want nods, Black Friday generally has killer deals on nods. Now, killer means they're still expensive, but not as expensive, right? If
Yeah.
you need
Instead of
certain
3 grand,
pieces
they're 28.
yeah. Now, if you need certain pieces of gear, or heck, maybe you're looking into like building your first AR. You know, Palmetto has killer deals around that time frame,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get stuff dirt cheap. You can get ammo dirt cheap, magazines, optics. So like, don't be afraid to hold out and maybe be like, okay, I've got a rifle with iron sights. I can hold off for a little bit, and I'll get until I get a really good deal because I just can't swing a couple $100, right? And that's totally fine. You know, if you have the money to go big, great. But you don't necessarily have. So yeah, so don't be afraid to go out and get those good deals. You know, like hold off and be like, okay, maybe I can hold off on upgrading my stuff until I have more money. Or, again, don't do these things at a financial detriment to yourself. Like set yourself a budget each month and set aside money, even if that only is only like $5 to $10. Like do it like the snowball method for Dave Ramsey, right? In the sense that like, are there cheap things on your kit that you can get like that you can knock out? Like maybe there's a product for $25 that you need. Okay, great, and you only have $5 a month to set aside. Well, you put out that $5 a month to set aside until you get that $25 product. You have 25 bucks. Sweet. Now that's off your list. Now you can save up for the next thing, and then save up for the next thing, and save up for the next thing, and then any additional money you get in, you can add to that pile, and you can do this stuff without ruining your finances and ruining your stability. Because I think a lot of times people are like, I got guns, ammo, and kit. Like I'm good. I don't need money. And it's like, well, yeah, you do though, because like again, the limited number of things that would actually cause an overnight collapse are again very limited, right? So it's more than likely going to be a long term, drawn out period of crappiness. Like the Great Depression, like was over a 10-year time span. You still had to
Yeah.
go to work. You
Yeah.
didn't
You were
just wake
still
up
you were still out there
like
working.
time to kill neighbors. you know,
You were still out there working. You were still providing, especially if you're a provider for your family, man. Like a lot of people, they think it's totally fine. You can run off in the woods and eat berries and fucking nuts and shit, and that's totally fine. But if you have your family, right, and you're putting them through this fucking suck, how long is that unit gonna stay like together?
yeah, they don't have food security. You are entirely beholden to whoever has the food, and your political ideologies, your uh anything that you hold dear, anything, your personal beliefs. You can be the most freedom loving, liberty believing person in ever, but if you're starving and someone against your beliefs shows up with food to feed your children, it's really hard for a lot of people to have the fortitude to say, nope, I'm good, we'll starve. you
Yeah,
know
don't feed my family.
Yeah, most people aren't going to do that. Most people are going to be like, all right, well, I'll compromise my values in return for the safety of my family, because
Yeah.
we all say like, oh, those who would trade security for freedom, deserve neither. While that's true, um, it's a lot harder to live up to that than
Yeah.
you would believe. So definitely, setting that budget and understanding, like, you don't have to be super Gucci in the beginning. You don't have to have the super awesome tricked out rifle in the beginning. Like my rifle right now is where it's at. It has gotten to the position that it is over time. Some people are great with finances and they're able to go out, buy a new rifle, kit it out, all set it up day one. My rifle has been slowly changing and evolving and adapting and getting more things added to it as time and money has allowed.
Yeah,
You know,
as well as you figure out that snake oil and you figure out what you actually need and what you don't need, and
yeah,
don't go out there and
exactly.
spend like thousands and thousands of dollars on a light and a laser, right? And then you don't have nods yet, but you're preparing for the future, which I understand. And to come to find out, you could have gotten a different laser that you're actually going to like more. That was significantly cheaper, but you only bought the more expensive one because you thought that was it. That's the end all be all.
Or even things like people who drop, $2,000 to $3,000 to buy a year's supply of freeze dried food, the survival meals or whatever, right?
Mm.
If that don't put all your eggs in one basket. Again, you don't know what's snake oil, what's not. There's a lot of companies out there that are pretty good about that. There's some that are kind of shady, but again, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. You want to have the ability to continue to get food and the skill set to continue to get food and make food. You don't want to just, the biggest thing I think about that too is the skill set. You don't just want to have to rely on like, hey, I have product A, I will be fine.
Yeah.
It's like if your idea of how I'm going to start a fire is just a lighter and you don't know how to start a fire in ways that don't involve a lighter, and then you break, lose, or do
Wet.
something to your
Get
lighters,
it wet.
yeah, like you're screwed. You put
Yeah.
all of your faith on a product. Again, it's kind of the thing with night vision, right? Night vision, definitely huge advantages, definitely an awesome product. I'm not crapping on night vision. But if your whole survival strategy is based on the fact that you can see in the dark and other people have a hard time doing it, what happens when when you run out of batteries? What happens when your night vision breaks? Or what happens when, like, we were talking to that dude from Alaska, when talking to Lat 65, when it gets so cold out that your night vision freezes up, you know,
Yeah.
the products break and they fail. So, or you lose them, God forbid you lose your nods or they get stolen. Now are you just like, ah, crap, well, I'm out now.
Yeah. I'm fucked. I'm dead.
Right. So it's one of those things where it's like, just keep all that in mind. Um, keep all that in mind with you as you do this and understand that like we all started somewhere. I think that's the biggest thing for us is we all start somewhere. We're not like these hype beast lords that are like, oh, you have to have the top of the line kit. Like that's the whole reason why we started this thing, me and Mike, is to be like, look, dude, you can be an average Joe with average stuff and be just
Yeah.
fine. I mean, like, dude, look at I was going to say, look at the Taliban, but now they're actually pretty kitted out.
Yeah.
Think
They got millions of my dollars. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they got better stuff than we do. But no, like look at the Taliban pre-fall of Afghanistan, right? Like, especially early invasion. A lot of these dudes rolling around with Chinese chest rigs, basic AKs that are clapped out and been used for 50 years. Maybe a
Yep.
hand grenade or two and some Baofeng radios. You know,
Dynamite strapped to their chest.
yeah, I mean, they're out there doing it with very minimal stuff. The Viet Cong too. I mean, there's stories. Again, I don't know the validity of this, but one of the things I've always heard is that certain groups of the Viet Cong were so limited on ammunition that they were only allowed 3 rounds a day for practice, for target practice. Um,
Damn.
they're out there literally in pajamas, SKSs, and cheap Chinese chest rigs.
Practicing more than you do.
Right, and they're out there putting their life on the line.
I
So
knew people that haven't shot 3 rounds in fucking years, dude.
right. So like don't be one of these guys that's, oh, I have to have the best of the best, and that's what's gonna make me, the number one dude. It's like not necessarily. You can get away with having some cheaper stuff and saving money in certain areas. You don't have to have the most high tech everything, which another great way that you can save money too is especially like on the training side of things. I'm a big fan of 22 caliber conversion drop-in bolts for ARs, right? I've got the CMMG 22 caliber conversion bolt
Yeah.
that allows you to shoot 22 out of a 5.56, right? I
Hmm.
don't have to go out and buy a dedicated weapon system for that. I can just slap this in there and start shooting 22 and save a bunch of money. And I can still get all the reps in and things like that. Like there's ways to where you might have to spend a little money to save money, but with the cost of ammo going up, do you have any idea? Like I'm like a super FUD when it comes to 22. I've got like 20,000 rounds 22. You
Yeah.
know how long I can shoot 22 before it begins, before I even get close to how much money I would be spending
On five five
shooting.
six.
Yeah, exactly. Like when 5.56 is going over 50 cents a round, and meanwhile I'm shooting 22 like it's going out of style. You know,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
so there's a lot of ways you can save money with that.
Yeah. 100%, dude.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing for a lot of people is again, like the gun industry is very hype based. It's very built on like, oh, you got to have the super high tech this and the super high tech that, or oh, this has got to be Gucci here. You have to spend the money here. There's a lot of things you can get away with, you know.
Well, also you gotta think like a lot of those people that end up getting those products and telling you you need them and things like that aren't paying for it themselves either.
Oh, absolutely. You know, how many times we have, again, going back to night vision, this is a classic example, especially as we begin to get into that Black Friday season soon. I guarantee you, all of you listening to this, within the next week or two, as we start heading into November, you're going to start seeing all the hype lord dudes start talking about the importance of night vision or the importance of thermal. And lo and behold, I guarantee you, right around Thanksgiving time, they're all going to have affiliate links for discounts on night vision and thermal. Not saying that they're not right, but what I am saying is there's sometimes an ulterior motive.
I'm saying is we need one and you need to buy nods from us.
Absolutely. When I say it, it's totally kosher. Everybody else is coming after your
Everyone else
money.
is shitty.
But no, keep an eye out there. Don't feel like you have to dump tons of money into everything. And even when it comes to rifles, if you can only afford a $400 or $500 AR from Palmetto or something like that, you know, don't be ashamed of that. Like
Do what you got to do, man.
exactly. Do what you got to do and run the crap out of that gun. Learn what you like about it. Learn what you don't like about it. Before you upgrade to something else or sell it to get something better, whatever you're going to do, figure out like what is it about this $400 rifle that I do or don't like? What works? Be realistic in your expectations and don't be this guy who's like, I've shot 40,000 rounds of steel case out of my $400 rifle and it works just fine. We all know you're full of crap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
You're not fooling anybody.
yeah, if you can
But
afford
with that in mind, though, I mean, even I've fallen for it, dude. Remember when I first started working? You weren't at the shop when I first started working there because you were on deployment. But when I first started working at the shop, dude, I needed to get a new AR, and they were like, "Oh, you have to get a PWS. You have to get a PWS because you're going to run a suppressor. You need a fucking um, piston-driven rifle, and this is the best one, and you need it." So I ended up spending like $1,600. Fucking bought the motherfucker, right? I loved it. I don't get me wrong. I love PWS. It was a great gun. Come to find out that I just miss DI guns. I really miss DI guns. I wanted to shoot DI guns. I like the way they feel better. I like the way they fucking. I just like DI guns more. So I ended up selling that gun. And are you still there, right?
yeah, yeah, I'm listening.
All right, and some like the episodes cut out so many times. I'm afraid that when you're being quiet, that it cut out.
Oh, it's all good.
Um, Ended up buying that gun and then ended up fucking selling it so that I could get a Daniel because I like the gas system more. I like the way it shoots more. I like the way it feels more.
And I can say too, like I started in that journey when it came to firearms that um my first AR, I had traded an AK for an M&P 15. I traded a really beat to crap AK, Romanian parts kit for a Smith& Wesson M&P 15, and it had some accoutrement on there, just a red dot and a few other things already on it, and it came with some ammo and mags. So overall, I felt it was a pretty good trade, and I was like, all right, sweet, this thing's awesome. And then over time, I kind of learned what I did and didn't like about it, and then I built an AR after that, and I was very big on like the idea of just having a bunch of guns, not really understanding like enough about them to know, quality over quantity, right?
Yeah.
And well, you know, as I kind of educated myself and learned and started working at the shop and learned more about like what do I have, what do I want, what do I need, I wound up selling, sold that Smith and Wesson. I sold a Saint Edge and a few other things, and upgraded it all towards one rifle that I could walk out with, and made the Daniel Defense. I got the Daniel Defense DDM4
Yeah.
V7 and tricked it out. And I had to learn though, like what I did or didn't like. What about these optics? Why is this optic $100 and this one's $500? Like what, they both have a red dot on them. What could be the difference? They both hold zero. What could be the difference? I
Yeah.
had to learn that the hard way. I'm a stubborn guy. Like I was very much like a penny pincher type of dude. Like, oh, well, it's all just hype. And I had to learn over time, like, no, it's not just hype. Like when I drop mine on the ground, it breaks. When you drop your on the ground, it still works.
Yeah. Or my fucking $300 optic is not as superior as that 800 one, but
But yeah,
sometimes they are though. Sometimes those optics, those $300 optics, are the same. There's
right.
only one way to find out.
And sometimes they fit your needs better. Prime example, I had a Trijicon MRO on my Daniel Defense for a while, and then I swapped it out for a Primary Arms 1-6. Not that one is better than the other, but the 1-6 with my offset red dot that I have on there just serves my purposes better than the MRO did. So now the MRO lives on a different gun. And so it's just kind of playing with things and learning things and like what setups you like. That takes time and money, unfortunately. You don't really have an opportunity to go out and be like, oh, I'm just going to rent this red dot and see if I like it, which that actually would be a really cool opportunity if someone wanted to start something like that.
Rent my
Just
red dot.
yeah, I mean, like, hey, think about it. Like, if there's a product you want, if you could come up with like a rental system, and then like if you like it, you just keep it, and then pay it off,
Just
kind of thing.
lease an optic.
Yeah, yeah, like the optic version of Blockbuster. You're
So
like, yeah,
I
I kind
mean,
of 1-6, but like sick, I'll just keep it.
that's a solid idea, but I'm kind of like Lucas Bockins in that situation of feeling like I feel like leasing things and doing things like that just really, so that's why he doesn't do it at all. Like there are night vision companies and shit like that that actually let you, like, you lease the night vision basically.
Yeah,
The way he feels about it is that if you can't afford them, you can't like buy them right now, that you need to worry about your other financial responsibilities before you just start spending money on nods and shit. And that's why he refuses to do any sort of like lease program. And I fuck with that, man. It just,
no, that's a
yeah.
solid point. That's because that's the thing, right? Is it's like a credit card, right? You look at it and you're like, oh, I can't swing $3,000 right now for this set of nods I want, but I can swing $150 a month. Well, if your finances aren't that great enough to where you can able to save that $3,000 aside, you probably actually can't afford an additional $150 a month. And even
Yeah.
if you can, you have the interest on top of that. So you're probably paying closer to like $4,000. You're just getting the product now and paying for it later, which is kind of the whole reason why we're in the economical mess that we're in, is our parents and grandparents getting rewards now and paying for things later.
Yeah. It's kind of the whole reason we're fucked.
Right. So it's definitely not a great practice to continue.
Yeah. And that's why I like it. I like how he said that. I like how he presented that. It's awesome. I feel the same way.
Absolutely, man. Hey, let's go ahead and wrap this one up, and then I'll close this one out. We'll open another one and start a new one.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Again, thank you for joining me and Mike. This has been another episode of Mid Tier Thoughts. Make sure if you are looking for some awesome coffee, check out Blackout Coffee. Link will be in description. Enter the discount code also in the description. You'll get 20% off of your first order, and you get some dope coffee, and you'll help support the show. As well as, don't forget to check out midtierthoughts.com. Our merch is up on the website. We've got T-shirts, we've got drinking glasses, we've got water bottles, stickers, all kinds of stuff. Check it out. If you go on there, if there's something that you want to see that we don't have, or any suggestions that you have for us, hit us up on our social medias. Let us know. We love to hear from you guys. We want to give you guys stuff that you want. So if there's something on there that you wish we had, or something you think we could do better, hit us up. Let us know. We're new at
Yeah.
this. We're trying to improve, and obviously want to make it work for you guys, because you guys are the ones that would be supporting us. So
Yeah. Be brutally honest. If you don't like the design or something like that, just let us know, and like that's how we figure out what you guys are looking for and what you guys are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like if there's
It's
a
how we
color you want to
adjust
see,
to the.
down. Mhm.
Same thing goes as well for our Patreon. Again, link will be in the description. Check out our Patreon. Any money that you throw at us with that or any kind of support definitely goes towards improving the quality of the audio and hopefully visual aspect of this as we go down the road. Me and Mike both want to bring you guys higher quality stuff. And unfortunately, some of that just requires some upgrades, hoping to get there. So yeah, any support you guys throw our way, we'll turn it right around into a better experience for you guys. So with that said, it's been another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next one.
Hey, tell your mom to stop texting me.